The Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan, and DigitalOcean. Go over to DigitalOcean.com and use our promo code LASTDigital, and then you can spin up your own Linux rig for free. Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 377. My name is Chris.
My name is Noah.
Hey, Noah, good morning to you.
Good afternoon to you.
Well, it actually is afternoon. It's a special Friday edition of the Linux Action Show, episode 377. We're going to talk about the show itself here in a little bit, but first, let me tell you about what's coming up in this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. Linux networking and its basics. Sometimes they are a little confusing, a little obtuse. We're going to explain the basics of home networking and using them under Linux. We're going to give you a few resources to check out, and we're going to walk down not only our previous experience, but also some of the basics you need to make your home networking work great. Have you ever been in your file manager and tried to browse the network and just had that completely fail on you, or tried to discover all the other machines on your network in a remote desktop application and couldn't find anything? We'll fix all of that after today's episode and give you some great resources to look up on your own. And then, in the news segment, there is a major Firefox exploit that's actually specifically targeting Linux users. We'll tell you about that and the patch you can get. LibreOffice just had a new release, and some of the back-end stuff that they worked on is crazy cool. You had no idea that a new Office version could actually be so exciting. We'll break it down for you. And then also about some of the interesting improvements they're making for Wayland in the future. Jolla tablet has an update. We'll tell you about that. And then last but not least, there's a petition to try to convince the White House to use open source whenever possible, but it looks like it might be a bomb. And then in the feedback segment, we've got some great emails, and we're going to talk about the show itself. We'll get a little meta with you. But before all of that, Noah, guess what?
The picks.
It's the picks. I love this pick. It's our Runs Linux pick, and it was sent in by viewer Robin. It's the school bell in the UK that runs Linux. Noah, this is cool. Do you want to read the feedback here from Robin, and I'll pull up the pictures to talk about this cool thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, what he did was, we've all been in elementary school where they have the bell that marks the end of a period. And so he writes in and he says, I wanted to share my own small runs Linux. He calls it small, but I don't think it's small. My own small runs. Well, if you're doing it it is dictating to hundreds, if not thousands, of children when to stop one thing and start the other. That's big. He goes, I want to share my own small runs Linux with you. I'm in an IT working in secondary school in the UK. I got fed up with our old, outdated lesson change bell from the 70s. So I made a Pi-powered one. It uses cron and a Python script that turns on a relay for a set amount of time. The cron is edited via the UI that runs on PHP, MySQL, on top of Apache. Photos in the UI and the photo build are attached in production and built since February and still going strong. That is a cool project.
He built it looks almost like a telco box that you would see on the side of a building. Yep. It's a plastic enclosure mounted on the side of the wall. But he put a Raspberry Pi logo on the outside, and he cut out a LCD screen so you could see the LCD readout that he attached to it. And here's a screenshot of the UI. It's nice. So it's got a whole PHP front end to set cron, which makes cron much more manageable, probably for average users. This is really slick, Noah.
Very.
This is, when we say send in your runs Linux, this is such a cool example of that. So thank you very much, Robin T in the UK. And I like these, like, our bell system was from the 70s. It was time for a change. And then this is where he went. That's just brilliant. That's because, I think a lot of people will be like, well, let's go look up the big commercial package and see what we can get. And then
oh, look, only $2,200 for the system control and only $361.59 per bell. And they're neck workable, so you'll be able to place them anywhere in the school. So for only $15,000, we could retrofit the school. Or you could do it for $20.
And then don't forget about that subscription fee.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you know what? Here's what'll happen. You won't be able to change the time of the bell unless you can log into the web portal, which will require a $2,000 per year maintenance fee or whatever.
You kind of joke, but
I'm not joking.
This is my favorite for the rest of the year, and then I promise after the new year, my New Year's resolution will be I won't use this anecdote anymore. But it boggles my mind. One of the largest credit card breaches we had in the history of the United States was when Target was compromised. And what Target's downfall was is they outsourced the management of their HVAC system, of the cooling of the Target store, so that way it was comfortable for shoppers. They outsourced the management of that. And the vendor that managed the HVAC systems for all the different Target stores used a VPN that was connected inside the target LAN. And so all the malware author had to do was compromise that one vendor, and then he had backdoor access to all of the target machines, which then once you get on the LAN, those point of sale machines were all running Windows XP, and they put malware that just read the credit cards right out of the RAM of the point of sales machine.
On XP?
Yeah. Yeah.
That remarkably secure operating system? How could somebody penetrate that?
Right. So these large managed solutions are real, and what they end up doing is they end up locking you into a system that eventually becomes your weakest link. And so I think traditional thought would be, well, don't build your own system, don't create your own empire of technology, because then you just have to manage it. But what Robin is showing us here is, for an unbelievable economical price, you can retrofit something from the 70s and make it extremely modern without this vendor lock-in, without locking you into some sort of management contract or anything like that. And that was actually what started to get me into Linux in some of the places I worked at. It was the same kind of thing. I could slip it in right here and just completely solve this problem. And it was solved so perfectly, you almost wouldn't even know we'd used Linux, because it didn't cost anything. There was no contract. There was no big meetings that had to go down to make it all happen. It just worked. And that's pretty cool to still see that happening.
And the truth is, you and I both, we shoehorn Linux into pretty much everything, partly probably just because we want to see if it'll work. But the reality is, stuff like this is where Linux shines far and above other operating systems. I'd be the first one to admit that Linux on the desktop has some compromises that have to be made. Overall, I think they're worth it. Having a big picture and knowing and understanding the whole landscape of technology, I'm still okay. I'm still comfortable telling people that's the best. That's the best course of action. But I admit that there are some compromises. I would submit to you that, with respect, there are no compromises to be made when you're using embedded type devices. That is where there is no better solution. Full stop. Save none. No exceptions.
Yeah. Very well put, Noah. You know where else Linux freaking rocks? You guys know that. That's the cloud. Go to DigitalOcean.com. That's the sponsor of the Linux Action Show. And use our promo code of absolute power, knowledge, and maybe even enlightenment. It's LAS Digital, LAS Digital, all one word. DigitalOcean is so cool. They're a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own Linux machine up in the cloud. Now, I say Linux machine knowing that they do have free BSD systems, but they have Ubuntu, they have Fedora, they have CoreOS, they have Debian, they have CentOS. They really are a premier Linux platform. And like with CoreOS, for example, they work upstream with the CoreOS project to get updates directly from them, which is just super, super cool. And when they work on code, they make it publicly available up on GitHub. DigitalOcean is slick. And what's really nice about DigitalOcean is they can get you started fast. Less than 55 seconds, you're going to have your own machine spun up. But here's what's really awesome. The value, only $5 a month for 512 megabytes of RAM, 20 gigabytes of SSD, because they're all SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. All of this powered by Linux, using the KVM virtualizer, all backed by SSDs, gigabit connections. Woo, boop, 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 boop. So that terabyte flies. They have data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and London, and they got a brand new one in Germany. They really are all in on Docker too. So if you would like to build something locally, test it, create it, and then when you're ready to put it up on a public machine to either get some nice performance or some testing or really to scale, you can publish it right up to a DigitalOcean droplet in no time. And then there's that interface that DigitalOcean has. It is so simple and intuitive, and you can replicate it on a larger scale with their straightforward API. You can deploy applications with a single click, DNS management. You can really go in there and adjust every single thing you might need to your virtual machine, like perhaps you need a new public IP address, maybe you want to expand the hard drive, maybe you want to shut it down and move it to a different region, maybe you want to destroy it, maybe you want to make a snapshot to base another system off of it. It's really cool. And there's a bunch of good community applications around that. And then to top all of that off, DigitalOcean has really, really good documentation and tutorials. Like I just looked at this one they posted recently, building for production web application backups. Backing up your web apps, something you're working on, extremely, extremely important. And also, a unique opportunity of DigitalOcean here is they have private networking. And so you could have a front-end server and have a back-end server connected over private networking to your front-end server. That means nobody can get to it from the public web. And also, the transfer between your public server and your private server is totally free because that's over DigitalOcean's LAN. Private networking transfers aren't charged. So you have essentially unlimited, which is really great for backups, or to have some backend resources, this is an extremely interesting way to utilize DigitalOcean. You've heard us talk about like using X2Go to have a virtual workstation up on DigitalOcean. Well, now imagine putting like OpenFiler on a droplet using private networking. Maybe you have a couple of X2Go workstations, $5 a month up on DigitalOcean, all with the same private network connected back to the same OpenFiler machine. You could start to build a mini LAN up in the cloud that you could connect to using X2Go anywhere you go. And you could try it out 2 months for free when you use our promo code LASTDigital. It's pretty cool. There's a lot you can do with DigitalOcean. I mean, we just scratched the surface. So go over to DigitalOcean.com, use our promo code LASTDigital. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. You guys rock! Okay, Noah. We got a desktop app pick. We got a double spotlight because, you know, actually, I'm not even kidding. We ended up with extra time on our hands this week, even though we're recording the show early on Friday because I wasn't so worried about the video production. So I had time. I got double picks. We got like an extra batch of feedback. We got a lot of stuff. I'm really excited about today's episode. So let's start with our app pick. This is Zoiper, Noah. Do you think I'm saying that right?
Zoiper. And so actually, oddly enough, I can't take credit for it. It's actually somebody in the audience that sent it in. However, they did it in the chat room while we were reviewing SIP, and you had installed it. And the only thing I really noticed about it was, I like that UI. And that was it. And then later I got home and I installed it. And I tell you what, Chris, I kind of went fanboy on it. I installed it on my laptop and it works so well. And you can buy a subscription service a professional license for it, which enables all of the professional PBX functions. So I can do call transfers and holding and all that stuff. And the great thing about it is the way they have their installer, it is a .bin installer, so I can install. I have one installer that has worked on Arch. It's worked on Fedora. It's worked on Ubuntu. Like it seems, it is basically as close as I've ever seen. Yeah, it's great. And they have it for Android. They have it for Windows. They have like every single platform. I have one program to use, and I have access to my phones. And the other thing is, I can add multiple accounts. So I have access to my clients' phones. I have access to our phones. I have access to my home phones. If I ever get around to actually shipping you those packages, I'll have access to JB's phones. But all of these are available in this one client, and it's an amazing SIP client. It's totally reliable, totally, I mean, everything that you'd want to see in good software exists in this piece of software.
It looks like also under Windows, it integrates with Outlook, and it also has support for LDAP, XMPP, XCAP, and there's Android and iOS apps available for it as well. And it says that also it'll look up incoming calls online, so you know who it is. Like it has a pretty advanced caller ID functionality too, which other SIP clients don't have built in. So this is pretty nice.
I can do the call queue. So like, let's say I can access the call queue from FreePBX. So like, let's say we wanted to start doing call-ins on the Linux Action Show. I can have it set up so that the call comes in and we just hit create call or take call queue, and it pulls the next person from the queue in, brings them on air. We talk to them. We hit next.
Can we do that?
Yeah, we could totally do that.
Let's do that. So here I did actually install it, like you mentioned during our SIP episode. And so I have it right here. The UI is kind of, it's very custom, but it doesn't look bad. I mean, it's not native, but at the same time, it's pretty nice. It's quick too. It launched right away.
And what do you mean by it's not native?
Well, like it's a custom skin. Like it doesn't look like a GTK or a Qt application, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, so if I upgrade, I get improved quality because it activates G729 and H264. And I also get call transfer, call recording. Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, it really is.
LDAP integration gets turned on. Outlook on Windows gets turned on. Okay. Yeah, not bad. So that's actually, geez, Noah, this is, you know, if I was in a corporate environment and I was using Linux and we had a SIP system, this would definitely be the client that I would want to use. And I like that. The bin aspect means it'd make it really simple to make it part of just a standard build. Very cool.
Yeah, it is hands down the best SIP client I've used thus far. And if I had known about it and had played with it prior to us doing our episode, I would have probably spent the entire episode talking about how much I like Zoiper and less about actual SIP.
ZOIPER.com, and we will also have a link to that in the show notes. Something we've talked about before, but we want to make a spotlight of it. It's never been in the spotlight, and I think sometimes you guys think we don't know about it. And so we're going to talk about it this week. It's C-File. Now, you hear me talk about Dropbox, BitTorrent, Sync. Is this sort of the same thing, Noah? C-File.
So a couple of things stood out to me right off the bat with C-File. I was playing with it this week because, as you know, I'm constantly looking for, I think you are too, looking for a replacement for Dropbox, and I don't think either of us have really found it. The first thing that stood out to me is there actually is a server component. Now, that's one of the things I really liked about OwnCloud was that I didn't have to worry about, I don't think in terms of my desktop being a server, I think of it being a client. So I don't really think about when I leave town, is it on or off? I don't really care. It's whatever the last state was. If something happened to get unplugged or it happened to turn off, I wouldn't think to turn it back on. And I found when I was using some of the peer syncing solutions that my desktop was the most quote unquote reliable to get to because I'm swapping laptops out all the time. And then if I forget to turn it on, then I was kind of hosed. So this, I can have a DigitalOcean droplet that has all of my stuff up in the cloud.
So let me pause you right here. So Cfile allows you to have your own, what they call your own personal server using their community edition, free and open source. You just download it. And then the other thing, Noah, that's kind of nice about Cfile is they also have like ccloud.cc and cloud.cfile.de, which are hosted versions of Cfile, and you could use their public cloud, which they promise to make secure. You know, one of them is hosted in .de. They claim it's, you know, all this and that. So you have the option of either rolling it your own and putting up on a droplet or your own rig, or you can use their system and pay them. And they also have a pro edition, which has like a 12-month subscription service, and it's based on users. And so then when you get that, you get like a whole bunch of other support and things like that. So you could have like, you could have your own small group Dropbox solution here, either self-hosted or using their pro system. And then you can also even get support. So, you know, it's not just like roll your own. They also offer a whole commercial side as well. Did you get a chance to see any of that?
I didn't. And I mean, the reality is not that I trust not that I would go out as far as to say that I trust their hosting, the security of their hosting. But I will say this, I don't trust it any less than I would trust Dropbox or Google Drive.
Yeah.
So if that's a workable solution that gives me the reliability so that I can build some trust in the software itself, and then if I want to move it to my own infrastructure, because let's face it, neither you and I can say with definitive, I mean, we both have a pretty good idea, but neither one of us can say with definitive certainty that our problems with OwnCloud are purely OwnCloud's fault and not something that we as administrators are doing wrong. I mean, we don't really know. I mean, we can both take a very highly educated guess, but at the end of the day, since neither one of us have actually worked on the code of it, we don't know for sure. So then the thing that appealed to me about this is I can use their hosted solution to gain confidence in the software. And then if I move it to my own and it doesn't work, I can say, well, maybe it's something I'm doing wrong. Let me look into that. But right now, I've hit the same wall you have, which is just that I don't trust OwnCloud with my data. I can't because it bites me more than once on serious things in big ways.
Yeah, so Cfile could be an alternative. Also, don't forget about SyncThing, another thing to look at that we're going to take a look at here in a future edition of the Linux Action Show. SyncThing has gotten some big updates recently.
Does it allow you to have a server component yet? That was my big turnoff last time.
Well, I think we could, I think when we look at it, we could roll our own server component essentially. Oh, okay. I think there's a way to do that. Okay. We just, and so, because, you know, basically the way we're recording this show, we're going to need to start exchanging large files on a regular basis. It might make sense to look into this. And so I wanted to talk to you about it, and we might make an episode out of it down the road. But yeah, that'd be a component we'd have to have, is a central sync server that all the files could bounce off of. I agree. All right, so we have a bonus spotlight item, and we also have something else to mention. Our friends, and also known as frenemies, good friends, good enemies over at Linux. Oh, wait, no, not Linux. I'm sorry. Hold on, Noah. I'm getting a update right here.
Welcome to BSD Unplugged, your weekly BSD talk show that's too busy getting actual work done to care about your silly display server. Oh, my name is Alan.
That's right. It's our friends over at BSD Now. They actually just hit their 2-year anniversary and just tipped over the episode 100 mark as well. And in celebration of episode 105, they have launched the BSD Now shirt. And no, I'm a little jealous. Their shirt's pretty good. It's pretty good, Noah. Do you see this?
There are some problems with it, I see.
They have the usual BSDs on here, and they have the BSD logo with a Z on his chest, and for ZFS and a hard drive. And they got the Blowfish logo, and they got NetBSD on there because NetBSD runs on a toaster. And then they have BSDNow.tv on the back. So you can go get it, teespring.com/BSD105. They've got also a ladies fitted tee as well. And just 2 colors, 24 days left, 3 more needed in the reserve before they unlock it. Teespring.com/BSD105. And congratulations to the BSD guys. They only have 300 and... I'm sorry. No, I won't even tease. Go over to teespring.com/BSD105. It is actually really awesome.
So, yeah, it's a very nice shirt. It is missing some critical components.
What's that?
It'd be nice if there was a penguin on that shirt. I think that would really bring out some character in the shirt. And
I feel like to properly represent how you use BSD, you should at least have the Linux virtualization layer on there. Because let's be honest, if you're really gonna
have VirtualBox, the VirtualBox logo on there for running.
Just kidding. No, it's great. It's actually really cool for them. Okay, so now we do have a bonus spotlight item because this just came out today as we're recording. Privacy Badger 1.0 from the EFF. Do you know about Privacy Badger, Noah?
I was looking at it just now.
So Privacy Badger is like an extension. I installed it a little bit ago. I have it right now on my machine. And it's supposed to use an algorithm to figure out tracking. And it's supposed to allow a little bit of tracking to make the website work, but not enough tracking that you get tracked like a Mo. And at the same time, it gives you ratings. And it gives you different how bad they're tracking you ratings in the dropdown. And you can report sites. You can report when websites break. It's actually pretty neat. I've installed it earlier today just to play with it a little bit. And here's what they wrote. They say online tracking has become a pervasive, invisible reality of the modern web. Most sites you load are likely to be full of ads, tracking pixels, social media share buttons, and other invisible trackers, all harvesting data about your web browsing. These trackers use cookies and other methods to read unique IDs associated with your browser, the result being that they record all the sites you visit as you browse around the internet. This sort of tracking is invisible to most web users, meaning they never get the option to agree or opt out of it. Today, the EFF has launched the 1.0 version of Privacy Badger, an extension designed to prevent those trackers from accessing unique info about you and your browsing. And they have plugins available for Chrome and Firefox. Yeah, and also, one more thing. It works in tandem with the new Do Not Distract policy announced earlier this week by the EFF, Disconnect Medium, Mixpixel, AdBlocked, and DuckDuckGo, which I was going to cover earlier, but this kind of covers this. So some sites can also use that. It'll work with that. And I don't know. I think it's kind of a neat thing. I'm glad to see the EFF behind something like this. What are your thoughts, Noah?
I think it's really cool, and I'm glad the project exists. And I'm sure for the people that really care about their privacy, this is going to be an excellent tool for them. However, for me to be worried about stuff like this, and at the same time wear Google Glass and carry an Android phone, it's like lighting a bonfire in my living room and then asking my wife to be very careful with her fire extinguisher in the kitchen while she's cooking. I think that I am so far removed from, I guess, paying good attention to my own privacy that I can't in good conscience, really. I mean, really.
Let me turn it around. Maybe you're thinking about this the wrong way. Think about it in this respect. Do you want one website to know that you went to Pornhub or some other website? Like, are you comfortable with websites sort of collecting collaboratively together to see all the websites you go together?
I guess no, but at the same time, is Google as a company not already doing that? I mean, most of the websites I go to, I get there by way of Googling their website to begin with. So is this really going to stop them from? I mean, you see what I'm saying? I feel like I'm worried about one small little thing, because the reality is all these companies being able to cumulatively track me. That seems like a very small threat in comparison to a single company with a ton more information. So I have a hard time, really.
I look at it as a multi-layered approach. Like, I can be more cautious about what inputs I give to Google, and I can also be more cautious about what inputs I give to dozens of ad tracking networks. And this kind of helps me do that, because this also helps with some Google Analytics stuff. So I don't know. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, to be honest with you. I think you have to kind of just use the tools available to you, and the less signals you give them, the better. Is more what it's not a one or a zero, not a binary thing. Yeah. But it's more of a gradient. I choose to try to generate less signals. I can't not generate any signals, but I attempt to generate less. And that's what this helps me do.
That's a pretty legitimate way to looking at it. I guess what I'm saying is I guess I'd feel silly sitting inside of a room telling somebody that this is a great tool while I'm wearing Google Glass, Googling things on my Android phone. It just feels, I don't know, it just feels weird.
No, I respect the fact that you are aware of that, at least. So there is at least that. And you know what? I'm going to use it for a little while, and I'll report back. Earlier today, I couldn't get Google Plus to load for me, and I wasn't sure if it was because Privacy Badger was on. So I disabled it, and I still couldn't get Google Plus to load for me. So it wasn't that. But I'm going to keep using it for a few days because once you install on one Chrome instance, it goes on all your Chrome instances. So I've got it on all the machines now. And I've disabled AdBlock Plus or whatever it was in the meantime. And I'm just using this in its place. And we'll see how it goes. All right, Noah, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Go to last.ting.com. Ting is mobile that makes sense, but I don't need to tell you that because Kyra can.
Ting keeps rates simple. We don't make you pick a plan. Instead, you just use your phone as you normally would. How much you use determines how much you pay each month. You can have as many devices as you want on one account. That's good, because when you use more, you pay less per minute, message, or megabyte of data. Your usage, plus $6 per active device on your account, plus taxes, is your monthly bill.
It's kind of crazy.
That's what we mean when we say mobile. That makes sense.
Wrap your head around that. $6 a month, and then it's just your usage after that. And I tell you, that's how I'm able to have a few lines right now, and it's like unbelievably low. And the value is incredible with Ting. If you go to last.ting.com, they'll take $25 off your first device if you have a Ting compatible device, and you might because they have a GSM network and a CDMA network. And so you just have to have a phone that's compatible with one of those, and then you can get a $25 credit. Well, when I brought over, now this is a little while ago, this tells you how long ago I became a Ting customer. I brought over an Evo 4G that had WiMAX. It had WiMAX. That's what I brought over to Ting when I switched to Ting. And I got a $25 credit, and then that paid for more than my first month of Ting. Now I've got, you know, the Samsung S6 on Ting and the iPhone 6. And I was actually, thankfully, you know, I was actually one of the lucky folks who was able to get on the GSM just a little bit early. So I've been rocking the Ting GSM network since a little bit before the general public, and I'm getting like 20, 21, 25 megabits here at the studio. And what's great about Ting is they don't really mind if you just want to use them as a wireless ISP. You just check the box, and then boom, now you've got a Wi-Fi hotspot. You don't have to be like in some sort of share plan or anything like that. And remember, there's no contract. So there's no early termination fee. The devices are unlocked. You own them. A lot of other people are trying to like kind of copy some of these ideas now, but nobody has the whole package. And then Ting wraps it all up with their incredible dashboard. It is so slick. And their apps for iOS and Android. Okay, that's pretty neat, right? And then they have no hold customer service. You can call them at 1-855-TING-FTW and a real human being answers the phone. It's pretty awesome. Also, they're really good about being transparent. They're really good about keeping you up to date. And they understand that their community is really full of a lot of savvy users, a lot savvier than your average telco. So they understand that, and they respect that. And if you go to the Ting blog, that comes through. They're constantly talking about ways you can save money. And this week, they've talked about playing it safe. They have an account security update posted on their blog. You can go to ting.com/blog, but go to last.ting.com to support this show. As a precautionary measure, Ting is resetting everyone's Ting account passwords. They say that some hoodlings, I love Ting, you know, they're so Canadian about this. They say that some hoodlings tried to get into Ting and they have no evidence any accounts were accessed or sensitive details were lifted. And believe us, they have taken a look, they say. But as you can imagine, their security engineers are working overtime to get to the bottom of everything. So out of abundance of caution, Ting is resetting passwords, even though they don't think anything's really been exposed, anything like that. But why not just have good password hygiene anyways? You know, we follow a lot of these kinds of things on the TechSnap program. And so many times companies blow this. They really blow this. You know, they have pride about it, and they have egos about how they talk about it. And they really just mess the whole thing up. Ting went to their blog. They wrote something in plain English that everybody can understand, everybody can connect and relate with. And they're using an abundance of caution too at the same time. I really respect that. I want you to go to last.ting.com and go to their blog and ask yourself, would your wireless provider handle this like this? Last.ting.com, go check them out. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. Last.ting.com. That's how you can keep us on the air, by visiting our sponsor, last.ting.com. All right, Ting, thank you very much for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. Hey, Noah.
Hey, Chris.
You ready to talk about a major security flaw that's affecting your favorite browser? That is Firefox.
Heck yeah.
And actually, this one's kind of nice, man. It targets Linux users rather specifically. I felt kind of like, oh, that's nice. So
that's
yesterday
terrific.
morning, and you know what? it kind of makes you feel like on the same plane. Like, hey, Windows 10's out, but doesn't matter. Linux is getting this too.
We can get targeted
this
too.
Came in like August 5th, a couple of days ago. A Firefox user informed Mozilla that an advertisement on a news site in Russia was serving Firefox exploits that searched for sensitive files and uploaded them to a server that appears to be in Ukraine. I love it. I love it. You know, it's like there's an entire conspiracy angle to this here. Maybe this morning, today, Mozilla released security updates that fix the vulnerability. All Firefox users are encouraged to upgrade to version 39.0.3. Now, here's what's slick. The files that it's looking for are like specific to Linux. And I'm going to get to this in a second, but first I'll tell you about the vulnerability. The vulnerability comes from the interaction of a mechanism that enforces JavaScript context separation. So it's actually supposed to protect you. And Firefox is a PDF viewer. Mozilla products that don't contain the PDF viewer don't even have the vulnerability. So like Firefox and Android isn't affected, and maybe your distro, depending. Here's what the vulnerability was doing. Once they got the exploit on there, it was looking for files surprisingly developer-focused, as Mozilla puts it. An exploit launched on a general audience news site, though of course they don't know where else the malicious ad might have been deployed, but on Windows the exploit looked for Subversion files, the S3 browser, and FileZilla configuration files, also .purple files and .psi plus account information, and site configuration files from 8 different popular FTP clients. Okay? Now on Linux, the exploit goes after the usual global configuration files like etc password, and then all the user directories it can access. It looks for .bash history files, .mysql history files, .postgres history files, and of course, .ssh configuration files and keys, configuration files for Raminia, which is the remote desktop application, FileZilla, and of course, PSI Plus, and text files with pass and access in the names, and any shell scripts. The exploit leaves no trace that it's been run on the local machine. If you use Firefox on Windows or Linux, this is from the Mozilla blog, they say it would be prudent to change any passwords and any keys found in the above-mentioned files if you use the associated programs. So if you use Firefox and MySQL, Postgres, Bash, SSH, or PSI Plus, Mozilla recommends you change your passwords.
Well, nobody on Linux uses any of those, so I guess we're good.
Wow, that's a heck of a bit of malware, isn't it?
That's not good, and it's even more depressing that it's coming out of Firefox. I don't know how I feel about that.
And you know, it's so interesting is that this isn't the only story this week. I covered a story on Tech Talk today. I want to say Wednesday, about it might have been Thursday, about malvertising, adware, an ad network that was spreading flash malware. And it's the scenario we've talked about over and over again in TechSnap, where if you can compromise the ad network, you can distribute out a browser malware on a pretty major basis. And this time it was actually focusing on Linux. Okay, Noah, let's shift gears and talk about LibreOffice. Version 5.0 was released this week. And honestly, when this first got put in the doc, when you put this in there, I said, oh man, what the hell are we going to talk about with LibreOffice? But actually, it's kind of interesting, and I know you're pretty excited, so I'll let you start, and then I'll tell you what I'm excited about. So LibreOffice 5.0, Noah, what do you think?
All right. Anyone who hasn't heard me talk about this, I also will get off by the end of the year, I promise to get off my fanboy trainism, but I had a user earlier this year that confused LibreOffice as Apple software, and it kind of lit a fire under me and kind of said, you know, we all come at this with a bias, but to a person that isn't familiar with what Microsoft Office is or what Google Docs is or what LibreOffice is, they don't know where that ranks in the scheme of things. She looked at LibreOffice, and to her, that looked like a piece of software that Apple would produce. And that was kind of exciting. And then that kind of lit the fire. And then I've had opportunities throughout the year to talk to the LibreOffice folks, and I've kind of seen what they're like and what their motivations are. And it's made me like LibreOffice that much more. And of course, then they had the Document Freedom Day, which we were just a hair away from being able to participate in, but didn't make it. And this week they released 5.0. And it has a bunch of different things that, as I was kind of going through, I'm like, this is the right place to be focusing attention on, with one exception. I'll get to that in a second. But they have new icons. They have a new sidebar. They have a new icons, new menus, and the new sidebar. So So basically, they have gone through and they're continuing to work on the UI. Now, I thought the UI was pretty good as is. Unfortunately, as Chris was saying earlier, we can't actually find screenshots of it. So I can't really say definitively that I really like the new UI, but I like the fact that somebody is concentrating on the UI. They have improvements for their ability to interact with Microsoft Office. And of course, that's a huge piece, right? First question I get asked anytime we install LibreOffice is this going to work with Microsoft Office? If I email a file to Fred, is he going to be able to open it? If Fred emails a file to me, will I be able to open it? Yes, is what I'm taking from reading their release notes. And of course, then they're going to continue to work on stability and overall performance, which I've never had LibreOffice crash. And at least if I'm thinking about it, if it has, it's so seldom that I don't even recall a specific time. The one exception, the one thing I was sad to see that isn't coming, and in fact, there's not even a mention of it, there's still nothing about collaborative editing. And I think
let me take over. Let me take over from here because you're right. There's no collaborative editing yet, but we might have some really good news about some of the back-end work necessary to make that possible. I'll get to that in just a second. Longtime contributor to open source, Michael Meeks, posted over on people.gnome.org about some of the underhood progress in LibreOffice 5.0. And Noah, this is the part where Chris gets excited because this is some of the cool stuff for me. So let's start with this, a GTK3 backend and Wayland support. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about VCL. The VCL toolkit, which LibreOffice uses a lot. So any improvements you make to the VCL toolkit helps LibreOffice on a massive scale. So one of the largest areas of work in LibreOffice 5.0 is actually in the VCL toolkit itself. The graphics toolkit LibreOffice uses for all of the widgets and all of the rendering. In 5.0, they've modernized and improved several aspects and bringing them in line with cross-platform toolkits. Now, Noah mentioned on the pre-show, and he got me thinking, I couldn't really think of a lot of other applications, but he's like, Chris, can you name another application that's more relevant and more prevalent on the Linux desktop? And so then when you think about it in that context, what they do here really kind of matters. And so that's why the fact that they've just finished a very rough initial GTK3 port hacked together by Michael Meeks is kind of a big deal. They call it the GTK-Broadway project, and however, most of it's done, 80% of it is done. They've been able to get this really close to completed. Now, why that matters is going to be Wayland support. So with 5.0 and the GTK3 backend and using CPU rendering, they're essentially 80% of the way there to have full Wayland support for LibreOffice. That's really a really big deal. And also having GTK3 support is a big deal. And that's thanks to a lot of help from somebody at Red Hat. Another thing to come in here is the OpenGL rendering backend also was significantly matured in this version, allowing them to talk directly to the hardware to accelerate much of the rendering with large number of bug fixes and improvements. That's a big deal. And then last but not least, something that's kind of an important aspect to this is a ton of groundwork was done for the Android and Ubuntu Touch versions of LibreOffice. Yeah, Ubuntu Touch versions. The developers from the Document Foundation haven't gone into too much detail about their plans, but they've said that the Office suite is coming to Android. Coupled with the things we already know about Ubuntu Touch, we can safely say that LibreOffice 5.0 will bring some very interesting changes to the mobile platform from Canonical. This is from a Softpedia article. A new version for new endeavors, LibreOffice 5.0 is the cornerstone of the mobile clients on Android and Ubuntu Touch, as well as the upcoming cloud version. As such, LibreOffice 5.0 serves as the foundation of current developments and is a great platform to extend, innovate, and collaborate. So this not only is the version they will base off for Android and Ubuntu Touch, but Noah, they've also done some back-end improvements on a LibreOffice Kit, headless rendering improvements, and the LibreOffice Online Bit. So LibreOffice Kit includes the basis for a new work targeting LibreOffice at the cloud. And I think this is where they're going to add in collaborative document editing.
I hope so.
Through this LibreOffice Kit that includes LibreOffice Online Bits. They began the work on with version 5.0. So it could be near, Noah. It could be near.
Yeah, that's every time I talk to somebody, and that's my one criticism, is if they really want to stay competitive as an Office suite, I think they really, really, really need to start concentrating, and I mean yesterday, need to be concentrating on collaborative editing, because that's a big thing now. And you know, right now I'm dealing with questions from people that say, was it compatible with Microsoft Office? I have a feeling in the not too distant future, it's going to be, well, how do I access this from home? And if my answer has to be put that on a thumb drive, copy it, and move it to home, as compared to Google Docs or Office 365, I think, or whatever that is, 363. I never can remember.
Or in reality, your answer is going to be uploaded to Google Docs.
Well, yeah, but then it's going to open with Google Docs. It's not going to open.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
Right.
That's the thing.
But that's what I'm saying. If you want to stay competitive, we need a solution, and we need one like now. Actually, a couple days ago.
Well, let's just we keep seeing them when we go to these events. Let's keep asking them where it's at. And we'll just keep asking. We'll keep getting an update. We'll find out. Hey, are you bummed? The Jolla tablet has a slight delay, but don't worry, it's coming. In fact, the first batch of tablets shipped to developers as loan devices just recently. Also, the Sailfish OS SDK is soon getting an update enabling coding Sailfish OS apps for the tablet using the new virtual emulator that's got an update. Jolla did just recently face some unforeseen updates. Issues were happening during manufacturing with flashing Sailfish OS onto the storage card of the device. Solving these issues did take a while for the Jolla folks, and mainly because they didn't even notice it till late into the evening. And because of this, they ended up having to bump the production, which caused a whole cascade, a domino effect. But they've been able to work through that now. And all components as of July 27th have been mounted onto circuit boards and are ready for manufacturing. Developer units are going out the door. Noah, did you get one of these things? What do you think about the Jolla tablet?
Not yet. I was. It's on my list of things to do is to put Jolla on my Sailfish OS on my on the Nexus and give that a shot. But everyone that uses it tells me every time I describe my problems with mobile operating systems, Sailfish seems to be the answer from the people that are in the know. So I'm excited to see if that can actually be an answer. But like you, I have some serious concerns about app compatibility. And I'm told that you can just install any APKs, you can install the Play Store even on Sailfish OS, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Yes.
But I guess the other problem is, and I have to admit that this is a problem for me, is that I have been really impressed with Lollipop. Like, to the point that I can't point to a single thing that has really bitten me other than my hotspot issue. And other than that, Android has been the mobile operating system I've been looking for. Now we still have. Well, hold on a second. I'm not looking over the trust issue. My fundamental lack of trust in the core operating system itself. But as far as from a usability standpoint, I can't point to anything that isn't working for me, at least right now.
Yeah. That is sort of the issue. Well, we'll see. But this could be a pretty competitive device if they ship it. I mean, the hardware alone looks extremely impressive. If you're familiar with what it looks like, it's pretty cool. Now let's talk about this next story. And I'm surprised that you put this in the lineup, but I don't know. It's probably worth talking about. It's a petition on wethepeople.gov, the White House website, petitions.whitehouse.gov, to encourage the federal government to adopt open source technologies whenever possible. We believe that the federal government, it states, for the security of the information it manages and the efficient allocation of the public's funds, should divest itself of cost proprietary software contracts whenever possible. And then they talk about, taxpayers' money should go towards open source. Now, here's the thing, Noah. It needs 99,931 signatures by September 4th, 2015. And right now, it has, and by the way, it's August 7th, 2015. It has 69 signatures.
So let's start with this. Tell me why you're surprised. Why you're surprised that I have to put that in the show notes. I guess let's start there.
That you actually think that this petition site does anything?
Oh no, I don't. I don't necessarily. I'm not. That wasn't what I get. Okay, that's fair enough. I guess I don't necessarily think it necessarily has the power to impact anything. However, I do think that it's a discussion worth having. That if we're going to take our tax dollars and be forced to give them to the federal government, and the federal government is going to then go spend them on software, why is it we are foolishly spending those tax dollars on software that any of us that are in the know are fully aware that those are bad investments? And I spend most of my day explaining to CEOs and presidents of organizations why they don't need to spend $14,000 to upgrade their office suite in their hotel or clinic or whatever. And why is it that we're not having that discussion at the federal level, particularly because it's my money in it, when I'm at a client's location, at the end of the day, if they did want to buy Microsoft Office, I send them a bill and then they send me a check and then they've purchased Microsoft Office. Really what's happening at the federal level is that the federal government is coming in and saying, we are going to spend your money to buy Microsoft Office when LibreOffice would do all the things that they want to do. So I think the discussion is worth having, even if this petition isn't going anywhere.
I agree. I was just kind of ribbing you. And really, if we could get up to 100,000 signatures, then they at least have to respond. They don't have to actually do it, but they should have to respond to the concept. And I think it's a question I would love to actually hear them address. It's not like open source is a new thing. It's something that's been around for a while now. They have people there that know about it. They employ it in their own systems. So why not? I would like to hear an answer to that. And so I think it is actually worth talking about. And the link to this petition is going to be in the news section of episode 377 of the Linux Action Show. We've had a couple people are in the chat room say they're signing it right now. Should we refresh and see if we have any signatures?
So let's see what the last effect is.
Totally nothing. 69 so far.
There's a couple things you got to fill out to sign it, right? You can't just click I support this measure. I think you got to enter in like your phone number and your address. And
I thought you just walk up to Mr. Obama and say, "Hello, President Obama." And
Hello, everybody.
And then you just and then he just files for it right there. All right, so there you go. We'll have a link in the show notes if you want to maybe push that conversation forward. Wouldn't it be amazing to actually get an answer to that question? That'd be a hell of a follow-up. But I don't know if it could happen. September 4th, basically less than a month to get 100,000 signatures.
All right, come on, last audience. Prove me right here.
Yeah, come on, let's make it happen. Make it happen, everybody. All right, Noah, well, that's all the news for this week. It's time the Linux Action Show arms you with the basics to make sure that your home network, or maybe even your small business network, doesn't suck. But first, we're going to tell you about our segment sponsor, System76. Go over to system76.com right now, and if you get something, won't you tell them the Linux Action Show sent you? These are systems built to run Linux. They got laptops, they got desktops, servers, and they even got swag. But go over and look at those desktops. Oh, man. Woo, look at that Meerkat. Man, I love these. And also, they got the Ratel Performance. And then that Silverback workstation. What I wouldn't do. Leopard Extreme also is a monster. And then check out their new System 76 swag. Noah, have you seen this stuff?
No.
They got laptop bags now. Look at these. Look how sharp these look.
That does look sharp. That looks really good.
They look really nice. Yeah, they look really nice. And so System 76 desktops built right here in the US of A. When you get them repaired, they fix them right here in the US of A. They have laptops that are not going to have problems with sleep. The webcam works out of the box. You can reload your distro. And you don't have to spend hours and hours making things work. And of course, everything's designed to work with Ubuntu perfectly. Go over to system76.com and get yourself a nice rig built for Linux. That way you don't have to fight with your hardware and you get to play with your Linux. System76.com, and tell them the Linux Action Show sent you laptops, desktops, and servers. Go check them out, system76.com. Now, we dance around this issue a lot. We talk about like different servers you can set up on your home network and different ways to use Linux. But something that's sort of fundamental that if you don't get it right, you're not going to have a good time with Linux is sort of the basic networking elements and components. And this is something that we sort of have never really sat down and discussed with you guys. And it's kind of maybe a fundamental that we've overlooked. And so we thought we should probably do an overview of some of this kind of stuff and talk about why some of the defaults when you have a home network, some of the defaults in some of these devices actually don't work so well with Linux, and why maybe you might want to change some of these. And that's maybe a good place to start, Noah, is it seems like that's probably something a lot of people would run into, is a lot of the defaults on their home network. When they're getting started, they sit down and they want to kind of understand what's going on. There's probably some generic configurations they're going to begin with, don't you think?
Right. So let's start by just simply identifying pieces of equipment. So a lot of times you'll take from the ISP, they'll give you this box and they'll say, here's your wireless modem. Well, there is no such thing as a wireless modem. I mean, there is, but there's not. A modem simply has two interfaces that are connecting, that is essentially bridging a network. So essentially, the network jack that comes out of the modem is the network jack of the ISP's router. That's essentially what you can think of it like. But they call it a wireless modem, and really what it is it's a modem, it's a router, it's a switch, and oftentimes it's an access point, and it's all in one little box. Well, it suffers from what I call spork syndrome. Spork syndrome being, it's like when you're going to eat your dinner with a spork. Is it a particularly good spoon? Well, not really. Isn't it a good fork? Not so much. But hey, it's a fork and a spoon all in one. And you see the same thing with compact stereos. They compromise to fit a lot of boxes into one. And the same thing happens with a wireless modem, so to speak. You have a really crappy access point, a not so good or configurable switch, and a very limited router, and an okay modem, and they put it all into one box and they sell it to you or rent it to you for, $69. And you can break that stuff out and expand your ability to do things with it. And a lot of the tools a lot of the functionality that you can get out of those routers are also natively built into Linux. I'll give you an example. A VPN. Let's say you wanted to be able to have your laptop out in California while your home is in Seattle, and you want to be able to open your laptop and access a local web server, or access your local network share, or maybe print a file for your wife or your kids or whatever. You can do all of that with a simple VPN, and that's not terribly difficult to set up, but it does require you to have a router that is capable of doing that. So we use Microtext anytime we're doing something at Altispeed, and I know that's what you have at JB, and you have another one that I think is eventually going to make its way into your house.
Yep.
I mean, so I was just going to, just kind of walk through some of the default settings. So there are a couple of main components that the router itself is doing for you that we just kind of take for granted. And the first is that it's acting as a DHCP server, as a dynamic host configuration protocol. So essentially, when your computer boots up, it sends a broadcast out and says, hey, I'm a new client on the network, and I would like to know how to participate in this network. Could you tell me? And the DHCP server responds and it says, all right, here's an IP address for you, and here is the subnet mask, and here is the way that you talk out to other networks if you want to do that, and here's where you go, here's the internet phone book, here's how you look up different computers on the network, or if I don't have it, here's the next available phone book for you. And that's what DHCP is doing. And your router, you can set that up to be your computer to do that. So for instance, a lot of times if it's a large scale deployment, we'll use CentOS to run the DHCP server. And that gives you a couple more options, but really inside of a home network, that's unnecessary. The router.
But that is actually kind of an interesting element of this, is your router is doing a lot of components that on a larger network would almost be broken out into dedicated servers. So the DHCP service that Noah's talking about here, when you turn your computer on and they connect it to the Wi-Fi network, or you connect it to your network, and you don't open up network settings and plug in a static IP address, you're using DHCP.
Right.
And that is almost sort of like network magic when you think about it. When you think about the fact that there's one central service that's coordinating, it's memorizing which MAC addresses are connecting to it and which IP addresses it gave to those MAC addresses, and making sure they always get those same ones, and then storing all of that. That's a really great service. And in some networks, it's actually sort of a way to even manage your network. So here, no, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but like here at JB1, what we've done is everything is DHCP, even the systems we assign static. But what we've done is in our Microtek firewall, we've gone in there and said when the computer with this MAC address connects to the network, always give it this IP address every single time. So essentially, it has a static address, but it's a static address being assigned by the DHCP server. Now, the reason we do that is because centrally, we could then update the IP scheme and not have to go around to each machine and go re-plug in the IP addresses, but that way they always have the same IP. So you can get kind of a mix of static IP addresses and still use DHCP. Do you do that very commonly, Noah?
Yeah, I mean, I do it. I tend to do it a little bit differently than we set it up at JB1, in that I reserve a block of IP addresses and then I plug those in statically to the machine. But as you were pointing out, one of the big advantages, or I should say, to add on, one of the advantages of doing it your way is that if you want to go reload one of those machines, you don't have to remember what the IP address is. You don't have to remember any of that. You just restore it and you plug it back in, and somehow automatically it receives the exact same information that it had before.
Yeah, because the MAC address doesn't change.
Right. So I noticed that one thing that was really confusing to a lot of people, especially when I hire new people, is this concept of a subnet mask. Now, I could spend the next 6 episodes of LAS, going into subnetting, so we're not going to do that. But there is, so everyone is familiar with the octets of an IP address. We have 192.168.0.1. So there are 4 octets, right? And essentially, inside of each one of those octets, there are 8 bits. And so if we add those up, you have 8, 16, 24. Help me with my math, 32, right? And so
I'm bringing up a cheat sheet for you right here while you talk about
wonderful. And so essentially, when we want to block a certain amount of those bits off, we are saying that part of this address is reserved for the network and part of it is reserved for individual clients. So the most common subnet mask we see is 255.255.255.0, and that means that the first 3 octets are referring to the network and the last octet is referring to clients. So you have an available addresses of 0 to 255. 255 is the broadcast, 0 is the network. So we're left with 254 usable clients on the network. For the most part, in your home, that's going to be more than enough. Now, in an IPv4 scheme, I could actually see you exhausting 254 addresses if you're using home automation, because there are some home automation systems that every light switch has an IP address. Every light bulb has an IP address. And if that's, and if you think about it in that regard, you might drop down, instead of a /24, drop to a /16. In other words, marking off 16 of those ones and zeros and saying the last 2 octets are reserved for clients. And now you have 254 on one octet and 254 on the other. So 254 to the power of 254. No one in their house is going to exhaust that. I don't think, at least not at this point. But I guess the moral of the story is if you have a very simplistic network and you don't know what to put in the subnet mask, use 255.255.255.0, or if we're using CIDR notation, put a /24. Most of the time, that's going to be your default. And one thing that I've noticed that might be important to anyone that is running a home office, a lot of the consumer grade Linksys routers will not let you put anything else, anything greater of a subnet. So the maximum amount of clients that can connect to like the Linksys N300, you can have a maximum of 254 clients. That's it, done. After that, you're hosed. So if you have a lot of devices that are connecting to the network, that's not going to work. Now the second service, and I know we've made huge use of this at JB, is DNS, or the domain name service. Right. And essentially what that's doing is it's the phone book of your network. So it's really, although network admins are going to laugh at me and go, of course we do that. It's not really practical to memorize IP addresses. So you don't walk up and say, oh, just go ahead and log into that server 192.168.0.50. Yeah, you're laughing because you're like, yeah, we do that all the time. What are you talking about? Every time I sit down, I'm like, yeah, just log into the server. It's 192.168.
Yeah, it's fine. Right, it's fine.
But most people don't do that. When you go to google.com, you don't go, oh, let me 74.61.54.31 that for you. You say, let me Google that for you. And you type an English host into your browser, and it queries the DNS server, and that DNS server spits back an IP address, and then you are given that resource. So that can be really advantageous. So for example, at JB1, we have the Arch KVM. So it's a VM server, right?
Yeah, it's a KVM VirtualBox.
Right. And so instead of typing in the IP address every time they want to access the web UI to change something on that, we've given it a host name. So now they just, I don't even remember what it is, but you type in, KVM into the web browser.
Or another example is we have a dedicated NUC in the studio that is constantly generating a reruns RTMP feed that we can tune into and display reruns. And so instead of memorizing 192.168.0. whatever it is, I just say, reruns. I just enter reruns in there and the DNS takes care of it. And this is the part I think that a lot of times when Linux users switch from Windows over to desktop Linux and they are using KDE or GNOME.
Yeah.
And they go to browse the network and they just get nothing, or like the results don't work or the connections time out constantly. They look at that and they go, oh, Linux sucks. Linux can't properly do network browsing. This worked fine under Windows. And what it really is, it's a failure of name resolution very often on your network. If you try to browse the network using your file manager and you're not getting anywhere, you're probably having unsuccessful name resolution. And like if you can't open up a terminal and ping another computer on your network by its computer name, your network name resolution isn't working properly. And so what DNS can do for you is solve all of these problems. And additionally, on top of that, if you use a local DNS server to sort of just cache your DNS queries out on the internet, you'll find over time, man, just simple things speed up. Like if you've ever seen like when you're loading a web page, down in the corner it says waiting for server to reply or waiting for server to resolve. That kind of stuff, when you have a local DNS server, goes away because it just, it resolves as fast as your LAN can resolve it, and it makes web pages load just a little teensy bit even faster. Not to mention, it makes things like Chromecast discovery much easier from your tablet. It makes network browsing much easier. It makes like if you have like Remenia or another remote desktop application that is able to sort of discover your network and show you all the VNC servers or SSH servers on your network, and they show you their name. If that never auto-populates for you, your name resolution isn't working. That's why DNS is critical, don't you think?
And the other thing you can do is, let's say, and I mean, I fully acknowledge that this is somewhat of a security through obscurity thing, but what I've done on my son's computer is I have pointed his computer to our DNS server in the house, and then I have locked the network changes so he can't change it back. And then what I do is I can go in, and so for example, I have banned apple.com from my house. So if you go to apple.com, it redirects you to redhat.com. and I can do that all in. Okay, I'm just kidding, but you get the idea. I actually,
you know what I used to do is I for a client of mine is I would redirect Facebook and YouTube.com. To a local page that would then talk about the company's best use policies.
Yeah, and so some of that you can do, and this might be a little more advanced than we really want to dive into now. But one of the things that I use DNS for all the time is, if you're familiar with what a hairpin NAT is, essentially when, like, let's say take my SIP system, when my phone looks out and it looks for sip.kernellinux.com, it tries to resolve that name, and if it was resolving the public IP address of my own public IP address, it sends that traffic out and it can't get back in without doing some really funky things inside of the firewall. So what I've done with DNS is I've just told it resolve locally to the 192.168.0.10 or whatever. And so anytime I'm in the house, when it queries sip.kernellinux.com, it resolves my local IP address and connects locally right over the LAN. And then I've also registered that with my public DNS server. So anytime I'm outside of the house, if I query sip.kernellinux.com, it uses my public IP, and then that does the regular NAT transition to pass the traffic through. And that's a really, really simple way that I can make one add into Zoiper. And see what we did there? We tied two things together. I can make one addition into Zoiper for entry for an account, and that account will work whether I'm inside or outside, regardless of setting up a firewall. And that's all done with DNS. Well, it's a really cool way to get some of that done.
And you can do DNS like Noah's saying on your router. You can do DNS like bind on a Linux box. You can do it with some appliances we're going to talk about. But I also, you know what? It's worth mentioning, like Tiskmonk2 says in the chat room, there's also the really, really, really simple DNS solution. If you don't want to worry about any of this, you just have one rig, you can edit your Etsy host file. And, you know, this is sort of DNS resolution light. I'm showing you here on my machine. This is my Etsy host file. I've just catted the file for you guys. And you can see right here where I could go in here and I could say these IP addresses. The format's very, 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 very simple. It's the IP address, and then you tab over the domain, the machine, the host name you want to give it, and its domain, and then just the simple host name right here. So you could assign anything, any IP address, your own custom host name in this file. And because the way Linux works by default, and you can change this, but the way it works by default is it will first check the host file before it ever queries DNS or anything else. And there you can change that, and you can change the order and how it what preference it uses, but for the most part, right? So if you just look at Etsy and it's hosts with an S, host with an S at the end, host, and you edit that file with root privileges, you can do really quick, easy, breezy DNS resolution. But really, the long-term solution, if you have a couple computers, is to do it at the network level.
And you know what I've done with? I actually like the host idea. And in fact, on my work laptop, I actually have my host file set up for microtechrtr.com. Links to the default IP address of the Microtex. Linksysrtr.com is pointed to the default IP address of the Linksys. So I can go in we have our access points, same thing. So when I sit down with my work laptop, I don't have to type that in 1,000 times. I just they're all bookmarked up at the top, and I just click on the one I want. And that's using that SE host file. So it is a great way to do some of that. It would also be nice, like for instance, if I wanted to, I have no need, the kind of sites that I'm blocking, I used Apple as a joke, but the kind of sites that I'm actually blocking for my son, I have no interest in anyone in the rest of the house doing it, so I just put it on our DNS server. But if there was something I wanted the adults in the house to be able to access, but not the kids, I might consider doing that, is not giving my kids pseudo access and just modifying the host file. That'd be a great way to do that.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and you don't have to worry about any parental control software or anything like that. It's just a simple host file. Now, so let's stay on this train of stuff that you could run as its own dedicated machine. If you're enterprise, you could spend tens of thousands of dollars on this, or it's really just built into the basic functionality of your ISP's router, and that's really the firewall functionality, because it includes that too, doesn't it?
Yeah. So with the firewall, essentially what we're looking at doing is analyzing traffic and then blocking connections or blocking traffic one way or the other. So I can have outbound rules or I can have inbound rules. And in other words, I'm analyzing traffic leaving or I'm analyzing traffic coming in. So for the most part, most default configurations will block all incoming traffic that doesn't have an outbound initiated request, and by default won't block anything outbound. So I can visit any site, I can go anywhere I want, but until I have a randomly generated port. Maybe we should talk about that. I don't know if you can pull up ipchicken.com.
Oh, well, should I?
Oh yeah, never mind. Oh, so anyway, so essentially what'll happen, everyone else can do this. You can go to ipchicken.com, and essentially what it will do is it will show you your randomly generated port. And that is how that randomly generated port. So I went there and it gives me my IP address, and on below it says remote port 58769. So that tab inside of Firefox with that IP address is how I'm getting data from that website. And if I were to open a new tab or a new browser, I would get another randomly generated port. And that is how you're able to use one IP address to essentially do 5 different things. I can browse 5 different web pages at one time.
Right, and every machine is good to point out here. Every machine behind the firewall is doing this, so the firewall has to keep track of this for all of the machines behind it.
Really, every single, actually every outbound connection, not just every machine, every outbound connection. So every tab I have open, every browser, every Skype window, all of those are essentially having one of these. And you're right, the router has to keep track of all those, so it knows where to send that traffic back. Now I can do some fancy firewall rules and say, for example, at hotels that we work at, we block their ability to actually access the web portal of the router. And the way we do that is by telling the firewall, if the traffic is initiated from this specific subnet, from this specific port on this specific IP range, don't allow them to talk to this specific device with anything other than obviously their internet traffic. And that is all being done at the firewall. Now you could do that at your house, and say, I don't want my kids to be able to go monkeying around with the router. And you could block them from being able to do that, or you could block a whole range of IP addresses, or you could whitelist a whole range of IP addresses. Of course, you can also block incoming connections too. So for example, you might allow SSH connections and say, when it's on this particular port, I want you to initiate an SSH connection with this server. And when it's on this particular port, I want you to initiate a connection with this other server. And that can all be done at the firewall. And if you are using the built-in router utility of your cable modem, you're going to be a little handicapped. So, for example, most of those will require that the inbound port is the same as the port on the inside of the network. So, for example, if I
very limited.
Right. So, if I initiate a connection to SSH port 2222, it assumes that the connection on the inside of the LAN might be 2222. But of course, there are some devices like my refrigerator that I can't change the SSH port. It is statically set at 22.
I'm sorry. Could you?
My refrigerator. My refrigerator. If you want to SSH into my refrigerator, you don't SSH into your refrigerator from outside the house?
No. Well, I do. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time connecting with this particular pane, but continue on.
Well, so if I wanted to SSH from outside of my house to my refrigerator, then I would need to use port 2221, and I would need the router then to actually initiate that request on port 22. And I can do that. That way I can get into my refrigerator from outside the house.
Of course, naturally.
Yeah.
And so firewalls are something that it's one of the first areas that when you start to get a little more comfortable with your home networking setup, you start to want to replace one. And here at the studio, we have a Microtech firewall that sits between our cable modem and the rest of the network. And then at my house, I still have a pfSense firewall. And so I've been kind of taking advantage of running one or the other in 2 different locations. And, the Microtech has actually been a very solid performer. A pfSense I'm a pretty big fan of, but the Microtech has been a really solid performer. And depending on the kind of appliance you get or the kind of device you get, like a pfSense or Microtech or some of the others we're about to talk about, a lot of the functionality we just described can all be wrapped up in a couple of clicks. So everything we just described, you could go do on your own with Linux. And configure it all using configuration files. And that feels pretty damn good. And it really is the best way to do it long term. But also everything can really be done with a lot of turnkey solutions. So there's a big range of how you can implement this stuff. And some of the stuff we're probably going to even go in a little deeper in the future. But I thought we should cover some of it. So before we get into like the easy turnkey stuff, Noah, is there anything else you want to cover in like the basics and the fundamentals?
Yeah, just lastly, setting up an access point. So once you get your router set up and you have all of that configured, for the most part, there are some configuration things you can do on switches, but I wouldn't imagine anyone would have a need to do that in their house. The one thing that you'll be left with, though, if you go out and buy a really nice router, is you'll realize that a lot of them don't have any sort of wireless access. And so a really good, solid standalone access point is the Ingenious, and they're like $40-50, and they have a nice little web UI, so you don't have to learn a command line or anything like that. As a Microtech does too, it has a web UI. But the only real important thing that I see people do wrong all the time is channeling. And that is that You have 3 channels on a regular, BG, and now it's kind of gotten away. We have channels 156 and 153 and stuff. But traditionally, you have 3 channels you can work with: 1, 6, and 11, and those are the only 3 channels.
At least in the U.S.
Yeah, in the U.S. Yeah, right. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, this would only apply to U.S. people. 1, 6, and 11 that don't step on each other, and so if you pick anything else in there, you're wasting frequency spectrum, and you are polluting your own ability to talk to your access point. So set your access point between 1, 6, and 11, and I would download a program called Wi-Fi Analyzer.
Analyzer. Yep, I was just pulling it up.
And you'll be able to see around your house and around your neighborhood what they are. Now, I noticed something interesting. When I moved into my house, I was unpleasantly surprised to learn how much pollution there was, but everyone had set the router. Most of these routers apparently are so dumb that they look and see where the strongest signal is, and then they just move themselves. So I at the time I had a Cisco access point, so I just cranked that sucker up and said, I want channel 6 now, and everyone else went, 6, I guess we'll go over to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then everyone in the whole neighborhood, their routers automatically moved off of 6. So now I'm the only one with
awesome.
6. Yeah, it's great.
You know what? That's
how we go. That's how we roll.
That's right. That's nice, dude. Yeah, Wi-Fi Analyzer is one of the best tools ever, and it's available for free on the Android Play Store.
Something like that existed for Linux. The closest I've found is Kismet.
Yeah, Kismet's not bad, but this is, because you can just bust it out, and I've gone over to like businesses, and I've been like, yeah, your Wi-Fi is seriously bad. And do you remember also that's how we discovered the new Vizio TV? Well, it's not new anymore, but the Vizio TV here at the studio was like broadcasting its own access point. Yeah. And you're like, what? Our TV has a wireless access point? We had no idea until we used Wi-Fi Analyzer.
I think it was Rikai that actually figured that out. That was that was one of those moments where you're like, wow, what a security hole, and we had no idea. You could just connect to it. If I remember right, it put you on the network and you didn't need any sort of security to get into it.
We were kind of devastated when we saw that. So in Wi-Fi Analyzer, not only that, but I take it to my house and, I see that like exactly like you're saying, it's a cluster of interference. And so just doing this can make a huge difference. And, going back to Linux Unplugged this week, we played your segment from Self where you talked about you talked to the guys that ran the internet there at Self.
Yeah.
And that episode, I think it was episode 104, is like some of the best information you could ever get to manage your own Wi-Fi network, either in your house or your small business. And then you combine that with something like Wi-Fi Analyzer, and I think a lot of times people will find that some of the wireless issues they have with Linux is just that wireless is a nightmare. It's just garbage. And you really have to set it up right. It's trickier than you think it is, and a lot of little things can throw it off. And if you use the tips in episode 104 of Unplugged and Wi-Fi Analyzer, it makes a huge difference. And then if you can get a great access point like the ingenious ones like Noah's talking about, you're really set. It's a good combination. So there you go. So all right. So you ready for me to tell you about some of the turnkey solutions that I think the Linux Action Show audience might be interested in?
Turn my key.
Okay. All right. So the first one is IPFire. You can go to ipfire.org, and it is a distribution that is built. It's a purpose-built distribution for the gerb. It's from a technical point of view, IPFire is pretty minimalistic. It's a hardened firewall system which comes with an integrated package manager called Packfire. And the primary task of Packfire is to also update the system with a single click, but also install like bug fixes, security features, and feature enhancements. Another nice thing about Packfire in IPFire is you can add new functionality to the IPFire system as you kind of go along. So as you want to become a little more advanced, you can add nice things like file sharing services via Samba or FTP. You can add asterisks as a package, various command line tools like TCP dump and nmap and traceroute, which is really nice for troubleshooting. And IPFire gives a nice UI to set all of this up, including DNS management and firewall rules, all powered by Linux. Now, I haven't actually run it in production myself. We're going to do a review probably in the future at some point. But everything we just talked about, all of the network stuff we just talked about, you can use IPFire from a live USB thumb drive, or you can install it and get the stuff we were just talking about. So that's pretty cool. So that's IPFire. There's a bunch out there, but there's one more I wanted to turn your attention to. Obviously, pfSense is a good one, and that's just going to get an honorable mention this week because I also wanted to make room this week for one we don't really give a lot of attention to, and that's Smoothwall. And there's two versions of Smoothwall. There's Smoothwall, the super expensive version, and Smoothwall Express. Today we're going to talk about Smoothwall Express, which is the open source edition. Now, Noah, are you familiar with Smoothwall?
No, I have. So I'll tell you, and you tell me if this is an outdated concern of mine. But back in the probably, I'd say late 90s, early 2000s, I was really interested in doing some of this stuff. And what I found was that the fabric used for network cards wasn't as fast, or wasn't fast enough to provide routing capabilities or switching capabilities.
Oh, in PCs.
Yeah, and maybe that's an outdated concern. It probably
no,
is.
it's not. I don't really find that to be an issue anymore. Definitely not for a while with pfSense, and really not with any of these that I've tested. Especially, you know, if you have less than a gigabit connection out to the internet, it's definitely. I've never really found it to be an issue. Now, smoothwall.org. Their goal is to be. Here's basically, it's simple enough to be installed by home users with no knowledge of Linux. So this is the one that's really supposed to be approachable. A wide variety of different network cards, works with many different types of connections. So if you kind of have a wonky ISP, they one of their big goals is to try to accommodate all the different types of ISP setups around the world. You can manage all of it with your web browser, also like IPFire. It is specifically engineered to work with older hardware. They have an active community, and one of the nice things is they do have the commercial version, which means there is a commercial company behind it that's, you know, in it for the long haul. And I like that. And of course, Smoothwall Express is the one you want, and I have a direct download link in the show notes. Last but not least, then we're going to get off the turnkey solutions because I think we could actually dedicate entire episodes to each one of these. But last but not least, Chat Room wants us to desperately mention OpenWRT.
Oh, yeah.
Which is which is great. It's a Linux distro basically for your embedded devices. So if you have an OpenWRT compatible router, you can take that crappy router with its limited OS that gets hardly any good updates from its OEM, and you can replace it with a fully functional frickin' Linux box and the full power of it.
I am ashamed of both you and myself that I didn't think to put that in the show notes, and let me tell you why. Self was impressive because the Wi-Fi there was really great, and the people that do it, they were really smart guys.
We covered that in Unplugged.
Right. Except here's the thing though, they're using $400 or $500 access points at scale. They were using $30 Netgear consumer grade routers and getting equal.
All using OpenWRT.
Yes, and getting equal, if not better results, because Zach, while he's a brilliant guy, had to walk around with his little sniper antenna and tell people to turn their hotspots off. Scale, they're like, go ahead, turn on your hotspots. We don't care. Our network is good enough, and had no problems. And they were doing that with consumer grade hardware running OpenWRT. I don't think it's a stretch to say that if you buy the right consumer grade stuff and put OpenWRT, you can have as good, if not better, than a commercial solution in your house.
I absolutely agree, and I have put solutions like this in production before.
Have you?
And not OpenWRT, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah, Tomato and DDWRT years ago.
Okay.
And they, one of the really nice things about DDWRT is I was in a really old, it was built in the early 1900s school building, and I needed to get the same Wi-Fi network across all 3 floors. And of course, it's cement and metal. It was built, way back in the day when they never were concerned about radio signals passing through the floors. And DDWRT made it so straightforward to have a bunch of Wi-Fi access points that were extended over Ethernet. So I had all 3 plugged in over Ethernet, and they formed one seamless Wi-Fi network on each floor. And it really it was one of those things that I was able to put into production and then never had to revisit. It just worked solid, like really nice, like solved a nice problem kind of thing.
I wonder if there's a way to do OpenWRT and have it do like an adoption type of an access point mode. Like, so the one concern I would have with rolling OpenWRT into production is that works great if you're doing 4 or 5 access points per floor, but there are some places where we have 50 or 60 per floor, a couple hundred in the building.
You need centralized management.
Right. But here's the thing. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody out there is like, oh, you can do that in OpenWRT. That wouldn't surprise me in the least. I haven't seen it myself, but if it exists, I would not be shocked in any way, shape, or form.
Well, you know what? LinuxActionShow.reddit.com, episode 377 of the Linux Action Show, and let us know in the feedback thread there, or email us, linuxactionshow@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or you read the contact page. What's that?
No, I was just going to say, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click on the contact link, choose Linux Action Show from the drop-down menu, and let us know that way.
That would be great. All right, Noah, that's the Linux Action Show's look at home networking basics for your Linux rig. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But you know, Noah, before we get out of here, we got some good feedback to get to, and we got some show stuff to talk about. You know, we've had a format change with this week's episode of the show that we're trying out for a little bit, and I want to address that here in the feedback segment. But first, let's get to the emails. The first email comes in from Chris M, and it's about change to the audio format. He says, I think this is a good idea to have an audio show. I've often have JB on in the background and only watch the video when I'm interested. So if you can have more interesting interviews in audio and a lot shorter videos for things that are great for video, then that's just perfect. I often struggle through a 2-hour-long video for information that I'm looking for. Short videos will be easier to find with a Google search. Have videos for the audio with more in-depth details as needed. Thanks for the hard work, Chris. So what Chris is talking about is one of the things we're experimenting this week with is an audio-only or an audio-focused version of Linux Action Show, where we record and produce from a standpoint of an audio show. Now we have certain video visuals that we publish, but from a production standpoint, we're focusing as an audio show. And what he's talking about here is we might still have video production elements that we want to release when video is appropriate in this type of production style. So we'd have a separate video like we did for OSCON, where we individually published each interview as its own standalone video. That way, if you were listening as a commuter or on the audio version, you could go back to the show notes and watch maybe the Prism interview if you want to go check out the Librem laptops, for example. Right, Noah?
Yeah. I don't, so you'll have to excuse me for a second while I get on a soapbox here. Both of us have been watching the Reddit and some of the comments on YouTube and obviously the feedback that's sent in. And to be honest, it can be a little frustrating. And it can be frustrating because I feel like our intelligence is continually insulted. This whole idea. So first of all, let's clarify a couple of things. This is not a Stallman issue. It is not we are intentionally sacrificing the quality of the show for the purpose of using freedom-respecting software. In fact, we've used Skype for the last 4 weeks and Chrome for 3 or 4 weeks before that. There is nothing in there that is particularly Libre or freedom-respecting. So that's not the case. It hasn't been the case. I think that's sort of because that's a little disingenuous, because long term, if this format works, our goal is end-to-end open source Linux production. Absolutely. That is one of the goals we're driving towards. Absolutely. Here. But what I'm saying is, at no point in the discussion has it ever been, well, here is a perfectly good solution, and the core reason we're not doing it is because of freedom. That hasn't been the case. There are practical ramifications so let's start with this. To the best of my knowledge, to the best of your knowledge, there is no solidly stable video conferencing solution that works on Linux that is freedom respecting, at least that you or I could find. And so that leaves us with things like Chrome or Skype, or Hangouts.
At least ones that meet our expectations and production requirements.
So in other words, even work, basically. And so Chrome screws the video up so bad that people are literally offering to send me $25 webcams when I have a $1,500 camera connected to a $300 video capture device connected to a $1,500 Wild Dog. So that is not, so Chrome clearly is not cutting it. And then that leaves us with Skype. And Skype will only let you do 16:9 video if you're
4:3.
Yes.
You mean, yeah.
If you're using Linux or Mac, it will force you to use 4:3. It will only let you use 16:9 if you're using Windows. Now, I think it might work on the latest Mac version now. I don't have, the end result is the same. I don't have $2,500 for a Mac, and I am not purchasing a Windows computer to do a Linux show, nor are either of us going to sit and troubleshoot Windows or Mac issues on Sunday morning when something doesn't work. I'm fully willing to troubleshoot and invest time learning about how to fix issues on Linux. I am not going to do that on Windows or Mac. And so there isn't a good choice to use. It is a practical ramification, and it is an insult to our intelligence when people post things like, change the aspect ratio from 4:3 to 16:9. It's in the settings menu. No, it's not. No, it's not. There is no way to do it. If there is a way to do it, somebody log into Linux, download Skype, install it, and screen cap for me which option I changed to make it do 16:9, and we'll go back to video. But
and that, people, is what grinds my gears.
That is, yeah.
All right. So now simmer down. Right, so, right. I mean, because, yes, I realize we've gotten a lot of feedback, and the thing is I actually don't even think it's about that. I mean, it is about all of those things, but what it's really about is, so I was talking about this on the pre-show today, but we ended up with enough extra time that we threw an extra bonus pick in. We were able to restructure the news. we were able to really just sort of sit down and have a great conversation about home networking and basic technologies there, because this week we focused on the content and not having to focus on the visual presentation of it. But we still accomplished some visuals, and there's a line we're trying to walk there. There may eventually be a version where there's like some sort of behind the scenes version of the Linux Action Show that you're watching. There's still some video where you can see us. There could be something like that in the future, but for right now, we're trying this in an iterative process. And there's some other changes down the road or things coming up that make a lot of sense for this. So I'm appreciative to Chris M and others who are at least supportive while we try this out. Because, worst case scenario, we can always just go back to the way we did it before. Right. And best case scenario is we discover something new that's more genuine to the show, that not only produces better content, but also showcases the quality of content you can produce using Linux and open source technology. And that, I think, is a big deal.
Well, and so going off of that, while I stand by what I said earlier in that the biggest hurdle was not a fundamental focus on the freedom software, that there were actually practical barriers to doing video conferencing. While I stand by that, I would also say it is a little disingenuous to go on the air and say, we do an app pick. We show you all the cool things you can do from the Linux desktop. And what kind of message does that say? Is the underlying message tone not look at all the cool things you can do with Linux, see how you can use Linux in everything, and then we don't use it? I mean, should that not be a core focus of the show, is to try to use Linux however we can? And I think there is some value in that. And there is some value in saying, if we're going to do video, if we're going to use Linux to make a Linux show, let's do where Linux's strengths are. Right now, that's audio. And I think we're on the cusp of video. I think we're very, very, very close. I think if we had a couple extra $1,000, I think we could do video on Linux, because we could have...
Well, here's what I like about it, is we can sit here and we can take this time and we can apply our expertise to video production where it makes sense. So like, say we go on location and we're doing an event. We could do that entire thing under Linux now using video production. We can do that. That's something we can do now, all under Linux. And we can continue to push that forward while we're also doing this. We can continue to work with an OBS developer to add the features to Open Broadcaster, so that way we can do more video production under Linux. Like, those efforts continue on even while we're doing this format experimentation. And even if this is like something we try over the summer, we are not discontinuing our efforts there. You're continuing to work with an OBS developer. We're still bringing a video camera down to LinuxCon, right? We're still expanding our use of Linux video production internally in the studio with OBS and sending video signals in between different rigs in the studio using OBS. Like, all of that and all of our contributions there are all continuing forward, while we just, with Linux Action Show, I'm able to sit here on a Friday afternoon right now and just really have the most fun I've ever had doing this show for weeks. Like, it is just a blast to sit here and try something new and not really worry about what the camera's looking at, but, pull all my monitors in, look at my screen, print out my notes, and not worry about my notes being on camera. I'm having a blast. Yeah. And I just want to try this for a couple of weeks while we continue to focus on those efforts, while LinuxCon's going to be coming up at the end of this month, and we're still going to be bringing a video camera down there. We're still bringing down our OBS rig down there. Like, we don't know exactly what the scope of work we're going to be doing down there, because ironically, the show that we'll be live for is Linux Unplugged, which is an audio show. But, we're still focusing on that. It's not stopping. And our thought is, focus on what Linux is great at, and offline pre-produced production stuff we've nailed under Linux. Live, show production stuff where we're at right now, there's some room for improvement.
Yeah,
we're really close.
And the thing is, I hope this comes through. I hope since you're listening to this episode and you've gotten to the end, I hope that you can hear the difference between us. I hope that you can, because one thing that the people, especially those that are downloading the show, they miss out is the constant frustration, the nonstop. Well, this isn't working, and Jitsi crashed 7 times. So then we got started at 3 hours late.
All the stuff that we cut out.
Yeah, right. All that stuff gets cut out. The faux show gets canceled because we run late, because things just take so long. And I hope that as you listen to this episode, you go back and you listen and you say, oh, you know what? They do sound more relaxed. That does sound like they're having way more fun. And overall, the content quality is improving. And, the other thing is our ability to reach places. We turned down events this year specifically because it's not practical to go out and do video production there. And that's because it requires, and I'm not exaggerating, Pelican cases, plural, full of stuff to be able to do it properly. And so with this, you went to OSCON and did a stellar professional job with something that is no bigger than a pack of cigarettes in your pocket, and a pair of headphones. And that's only possible if we're focusing on on audio.
There was a I think we could say what event it. I don't think. Do you think it's a big deal if we say what event it is? We had to cancel because of the video stuff.
No,
I don't think it's a big deal. Because we really wanted to go. It was Flock for the Fedora conference. The Flock organizers wanted Noah and I to go there and attend Flock, and we really wanted to go there. But I mean, it would have been $1,000 out of pocket for us to ship the equipment there to begin with, not to mention the time window to make it possible and the editing window and all of that. We just couldn't do it. And of course, we hadn't really thought about this new format. It was just one of the things that contributed to our decision chain to get here. Was this is a continual problem that we keep running into. What can we do? And so now here we are. And that was, it was kind of a bummer because it meant it was something we couldn't attend. And it was, it's nice to be invited to those things. It's nice to have the show invited, and for them to try to go out of their way to make it work for us was really nice. And so, next year we hope we can make it, but this year it didn't work out.
I'll leave it at this too, is that oftentimes I go into places and people tell me something can't be done on Linux, and my answer is that person is usually getting the way of getting it done, and then I show them how it can be done. So if we're wrong, write in and tell us. We would love to know if there is a way to do remote video conferencing well done. So we need to be able to specify things like the video bit rate and the audio codec used and the video codec. And if you can find
the resolution
and the aspect ratio, as weird as that is to say in 2015, that I would need to explain that we need to be able to specify that. If there is a way to do that and we're not seeing it, by all means, let us know. But so far, I feel like we've tried them all and it just isn't quite working. We're very close. And I think that, like I said, if a couple things changed, if either one of us had like a week to devote to time to fixing the problem, or if we had a couple $1,000s to throw at it, I think either of those things we'd probably be able to scrape by. But just right now with the budget we have and the time we have, it just isn't happening. And frankly,
I just want to make two comments about that. One is that doesn't totally solve the entire problem, because then we're going back to focusing on the visual production aspect instead of actually focusing on the content. And like when it came to the Windows 10 review, 2 days were spent just on the visual presentation of it, just to have YouTube pull it down several hours later. 2 days lost working on the visual presentation. 3 laptops formatted to make that possible, just to have YouTube pull it down hours later. Right, so even if we were able to solve have this amazing HD remote video with incredible back and forth latency,
that's 30% of it.
Then we still we still haven't solved the content issue, and to be honest with you, we still haven't solved the fact that there is something about the audio only format that is more personable, it is more comfortable, it is more relaxed, not more just for you and I.
Yeah.
It's more fun, and also it can be more powered by hardware specifically and Linux. So that's like 3 or 4 more things. But you notice this too, because you were right there with me at OSCON. People that we interview are way more noticeably comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you do an audio interview with people, they make jokes. They kind of maybe even tell you something they maybe aren't even supposed to say. But when you show up with a camera, you have the process of setting up the camera and getting the tripod and having people clear out in front of you, and then you walk around the booth to them and you stand next to them, and everybody has to adjust their stuff and
the red
they
light
think
comes
about,
on.
geez. And I'm like, I'm not sure if maybe you want to talk to me. You might want to talk to our developer because he's really the one that knows this stuff. And you're like, no, I want to talk to you. You're the one that can speak clearly. I want to speak to you. And like they get nervous and stuff, right? But this is true, right? It happens every time, doesn't it?
No,
every single time, right?
Yeah.
But when you walk up with something the size of a cigarette pack, and it's a little recorder, and you just say, "Hey, I'm Chris from Jupiter Broadcasting, and would you mind talking on mic about the Matrix here?" And they just start talking to you, and it's not a big deal. And I'm looking them in the eye, they're looking me in the eye, and we're having a conversation. I'm just holding a recorder around my like chest level, and we get a much more intimate interview. And it has nothing to do with the how hard video is on Linux or remote video conferencing solutions or open source codecs or patent encumbered this or that. It is just the practical nature of 2 people having a very relaxed conversation versus 2 people presenting in front of a camera. And you get completely different results. And I think for what we want in the show, that genuine, real human connectivity, and not just like the sales pitch that you get when somebody's talking to you.
Preach it.
I think it works better in our show to get the more genuine stuff. Yeah. And so it's something we just, and again, it's not a permanent switch necessarily. We're going to try it for a little while and see if you guys think it makes for a better show.
I can tell you, I mean, it doesn't matter what I think, because I'm not on the receiving end of it, but I can tell you that just at the end of the show, just everything feel more relaxed. We've gone on for 2 hours and 23 minutes, and I feel like I could go on for another 2 hours if we had to, no problem. And that would not be the case if we had video going.
Last but not least it could potentially make the barrier to community contributions to this show a lot lower, because there's more and more podcasters out there like our friends Popey and Wimpy that have really great setups that they could now record audio contributions that we could play in the show that before we wouldn't have been able to accept, because what would we have matched visually for that? What could we have displayed while we were just playing an audio clip?
Yeah.
Nothing. Right? So we have a whole new a range of potential contributions now. And this is something we could really experiment with. It's extremely exciting. And it could be a great way for us to maybe get some outside perspectives on things too. So it's something I'm also really excited to play with. Now, we got to keep going. We got to keep moving. Okay. So do you want to read Magic Man's
Magic Man
email here?
He says, going video, quote unquote, enhanced. As beautiful as your face is, and I think he's talking to you, not looking at it anymore, you are no longer entangled in a net of filthy, unethical software which would cause much happiness. Really, if it was unplugged where you can read the chat room and maybe some images of the stuff you're talking about without the live video of you or Noah, great job, keep it up. Purge all the proprietary garbage with fire from your life to find peace of mind. And the reality is, we beat the bush to death now, but yes, we can do that on Linux, so that's great.
Yeah, that's true, right?
So the last piece of feedback, I don't know if you want to take it or if you want me to.
Yeah, I know, I'll take it. Now, this one is about DVR software from Johnny K. He said, you asked if there's any software for Linux for DVRs. Well, I haven't worked in security. I've worked in the security industry since college, and back then it was all hardware driven. Anyway, I came across a quick search that turned up this stuff. I never used it before, but of course there's ZoneMinder, which we've covered on the show before. And here's another. BlueCherryDVR.com. Now that's a new one. Anyway, I found out there's an actual DVRs running Linux. I love the show. Please keep it up and good work, guys. I would rather not see a review that of the OS that shall not be named. Oh, I really don't see a need for that OS. Ha! Anyways, he goes and says, sorry for the sarcasm, but when a company takes more pride in their background than their security features, it makes you wonder if they're selling an OS or poorly built graphic systems. That's why that was my point about the background, and he said it way better than I did during our Windows 10 review. Thank you, Johnny K, very much. Now, there is a thread over in the Linux Action Show subreddit about some crazy last ideas, and I can't read the whole thing, but Sam was pretty passionate about it. And Sam says, maybe instead of giving up on video, maybe you get video working under Linux. Well, actually, that's exactly what we're going to do. And if you have any thoughts on that, you guys are welcome to contribute over at the Linux Action Show subreddit, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. That's a great place for stories, links, app picks, runs Linux. It's the August time period. August and September are murder for news, because a lot of open source developers, and good for them, are taking some time off. You know, they go on vacation or whatever. And I tell you, we've been doing this show now nearly for this. We are on June 10th. It will be the 10th year of the Linux Action Show. And that's one of the reasons we're trying this experiment right now, is we want to try this out before we hit our 10-year mark. And we just kind of want to see if, we wanted to go another 10 years. And so we want to make sure that we are legitimately being genuine to ourselves and doing this show in a sustainable way for us. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this experiment. And, I think I would love to get your feedback. So linuxactionshow.reddit.com. And I can tell you, after 10 years of doing this show, August is murder for the news flow. And so we could really use your contributions, your votes, your comments, linuxactionshow.reddit.com, your feedback for the format change, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. But I do ask you to keep an open mind. It is something that is evolving. It'll continue to change and be tweaked for the next couple of weeks. We are doing the show live on Friday for a little while. We don't know if it's going to work for Noah's work schedule, but we're trying this crazy concept after all these years of maybe having a weekend. 2 days. Yeah, 2 days. Saturday ends, because here's what happens for all of you a little behind the curtain here. If you do a Sunday morning show, what that really ends up happening, because you're dedicated to your job and you don't want to go on air unprepared, is you end up spending Friday evening and Saturday evening and chunks
Thursday evening.
Yes, and of
Tuesday
course,
and Wednesday filming pre-sessions before we start doing show notes on Thursday.
And of course, you and I coordinating what are we going to do this week? What are we going to do this week? So we're having that call or that chat session earlier in the week, and then working. And so what ends up happening is, to do a show on Sunday, essentially your entire weekend is spent either thinking about the show or working on the show. And even if you're doing something with the family, or you're working on another job thing, you're still thinking about the fact that Sunday morning you have a show coming up. And in the back of your mind, it sounds crazy, but in the back of your mind, there's like this countdown, that like the Jack Bauer style kind of countdown in the background. You in a certain amount of hours you're going to go live, and so you always think about it. And it means you never get a weekend. Mm-hmm. And so when we talked about moving the show to Friday, my first thought was, oh man, I know there are people that have their routines built around the Sunday live show. We got an email into the show about a gentleman who his wife cooks email based around this when we go live in the segments and stuff.
Lunch, yeah. They schedule their lunch around last.
Oh, was it lunch? I thought it was dinner. Yeah,
whatever it was.
Yeah, he comes in with the email and he says, "Yeah, I thought it was dinner." But yeah, it's just like the whole routine is based around the Sunday live show, and I really appreciate that, and I also have routines like that, and I totally understand it. But I have to tell you, the idea of even for just a few weeks of having a weekend, it is very, very exciting, and it's just something I want to try for a little while. Just have 2 days off. And just see how that feels without ever having to work on a show or anything or even prep for a show for 2 days, which I've never done in like 10 years.
I'm a little concerned about you.
I know.
You might wind up inside of a padded room. Like, I don't know what to do with myself.
I'm going to go crazy. I know. I'm going to go nuts, man. I'm going to come back on Monday and be like, guys, I got an idea for like 10 new shows.
Here's what's going to happen. I guarantee you this is going to happen. Everyone mark my words, and then when this comes through, you can say no as a prophet, okay? You're going to wake up on Sunday morning and freak the F out.
I am.
You're gonna be like, I have to be on air.
I've already talked to Angela about this. I'm like, I am, and not only that, but I think I'm gonna come to the studio and still try to play last in the 10 o'clock time slot.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna be at the studio by myself, but not doing a show at 10 o'clock. Like that is gonna feel extremely, extremely weird.
I'm not gonna get out of bed, but I'll roll over and telegram you so you feel like there's somebody else there. How about that?
Yeah, no, that'll be nice. That'll be nice. So if you'd like to give us some feedback in person or just come say hi or just maybe shake hands with Linus Torvalds, come to LinuxCon. We're going to be there on the 17th and 18th of August this month. We're going to have a meetup soon at meetup.com/JupiterBroadcasting. You can join our group there, and then you'll get notified when we create the meetup group. Something kind of cool. They're doing an open source t-shirt contest, and they're going to be judging the best like retro open source t-shirt and original open source t-shirt, and Angela is going to be on the panel. So you should, I'm just saying. Maybe you'll have an in with the judge. Maybe you should wear an awesome shirt. And we'll have more information about that. You can also catch this week's faux show where we talk about that. Did you hear about that? That she's going to be on the panel?
I did. She sent me a telegram.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So, and Noah's going to be in town. And if all goes as planned, we'll be doing Linux Unplugged the Tuesday. So that'll be the 18th of August down there in Seattle. So I'm really excited to have it here in Seattle. And I'm also just kind of early planning to go to PAX on Monday. So there's PAX Prime is coming on, I think that's August 31st. And I might, if you're going to be at PAX Prime on August 31st and want to say hi to me, I'll be down there in Seattle on August 31st at PAX. And I'm going to be looking for the open source games and Linux games and people that are targeting SteamOS and things like that at PAX Prime on August 31st. I'd like for you guys to come say hi. And Noah, where can people find you throughout the week?
I was thinking about this. At some point, I'm going to have to start a blog or something like that so I have something more pertinent to send people to, because Ultispeed, we're great inside of the Grand Forks community. In fact, so there's a big push, and it's been a huge threat to us as local IT providers. There are these national companies that have come in and tried to run us out, and they offer ridiculously cheap rates, but they don't actually do any support. They mail all the stuff overnight, and then they give you written instructions on how to plug all this stuff in. Well, it came crashing down like a pile of bad bricks on Tuesday, and we had this hotel. They had just built it. First full week that they're there, they have 80 occupants and no network connectivity. Can't check anyone in on the front desk. Can't get anyone to get. So the general manager calls me and she's like, "You guys are kind of the name in the city for doing hospitality. Would you come take a look?" So I come over there and they said, "Yeah, listen. Everything in here, we want it all gone. Put in your equipment, do whatever you have to do, but get us up now." And so, yeah, the national support company just totally flopped. And it's great because this has been the first real example now that I can point out to other clients and say, listen, this is why you don't want to do the fly-by-night $9.99 a month installer. Instead, pay a real professional to be here, because when something happens, we're going to be here. And yeah, we were able to get them up and running in just under 6 hours. So they were pretty happy. And
that is legitimate. The hands-on thing is awesome. Although I still think it'd be great if you did some remote support for some hotels out here in the Pacific Northwest.
You know what I'm going to do? I think I told you about this. I'm going to offer one heck of a deal to that particular.
Yeah, the one you stay at.
Yeah. And because their guest Wi-Fi is god awful, and I would do it at cost just so that I would have good Wi-Fi when I'm there.
Dude, you should mention your Twitter handle. That's really where people could check you out.
Linux. Yeah, I've been trying to get better, but I don't have Facebook on the phone anymore. So the only way I get push notifications with Twitter. So tweet at me.
At Chris LAS, that's me. And Noah, I might eventually be tweeting about something I have in my hand right here.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little teaser.
My ADD, I forgot about it. What is it?
Can you guess what this is? So I'm going to drop it on the table.
Okay,
so here's, I'm shaking it right now.
Shake it.
And I'm going to drop it. Theater of the mind, Noah.
Right.
It's a bit of swag we're going to be giving out at LinuxCon. That's your hint. And I'm going to drop it on the table, see if you can identify it.
All right. It sounds like a paper butterfly with a Linux pin strapped to the front of a monkey. How close am I?
Well, you're close in the sense of Linux and something else. But I'm going to have to wait. I don't know if I have to get permission from our swag master before I reveal it. But she's put something together. Let's just say the Linux Action Show logo was designed with certain things in mind, and this is one of them. And this is going to be one of the ultimate swag items we're going to give away. It would look amazing on a laptop bag, a backpack, a shirt, anything like that. And it's going to be a swag item at LinuxCon. And then we just got a batch of them, and they're really awesome. So I can't wait to tell you guys about it. And also... Blaster and crew are working on some secret plans for Ohio Linux Fest. So if you're going to be at Ohio Linux Fest, there could be some crew down there in the future too. That's coming up down the road. But stay tuned for more information about that. LinuxActionShow.reddit.com is where you go to contribute to the show. If there was a story we didn't cover, you can submit it there and vote on it, or give your comments or insights if you think we got something wrong. Go to JupiterBroadcasting.com/contact to send us feedback. And JBLive.tv is where we do it live. You can go to JupiterBroadcasting.com/calendar, and then you'll get that in your local time zone to find out if we're doing the show on a Friday or a Sunday or anything like that. Of course, we also do a bunch of other shows, including shows about BSD, system administration, development, community, and daily tech news over at JupiterBroadcasting.com. All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. Check out my ambiance I got going here. I got a lamp over here.
Oh, look at you!
I got the lights off. It's nice.
How's that? Yeah. I bet it's a
little warm, but it's,
really?
Yeah, it's not as bad. But it's not as bad. It's still a little warm, but it's not as bad.
I tell you what, I can already tell as far as I'm pumped about the not just the audio quality of the show, but I think the content quality is about to significantly go up because I'm noticing a couple things. Now that I don't have to be cognizant of the camera because there isn't a camera. So now I can be paying attention to the show notes, I can be paying attention to the chat room, and we can continue to have a dialogue at the appropriate time, and there isn't that added pressure of I have to be staring at the camera wasting time while Chris is doing his intro. It's actually really nice.
So you sound significantly better today.
Well, gee, thank you, because I spent literally 6 hours yesterday setting this whole rigamadig up. It wasn't that I was absent to good audio quality when we were on video, but the focus was on the video and making it practical so that I could do everything from sitting at the kiosk with the thing, and all those barriers have been broken down now. So now it's just, what do I need to do to sound the best? Well, that's put soundproofing up because nobody can see it, so it doesn't matter. Well, I want a really nice big microphone boom because it doesn't matter if it's in camera. That doesn't matter anymore. What color does a microphone have to be? Oh, that doesn't matter because it's not on camera anymore. And then I can have the mixer right next to me. I can be making adjustments on the fly. I have a compressor. Love it.
Yeah, I have all of the monitors pulled in. So they're all closer, so I can read the screens easier, which is the first thing that was really nice, is I didn't have to worry about where the screens were at in relation to the camera. But what was really funny is I came in here at 2 o'clock, and I started setting up. And at about 2:10, I realized, well, shit, I'm done. Like I don't have to turn the lights on. So there's a whole sequence of events, because studio lights take about 15 minutes or 20 minutes to get to their maximum actual brightness. Right. Really, it's probably not that long, but that's how long I give them.
Which you have to do before you can even begin to adjust, much less complete.
Right, so before I even bother turning on the camera and setting the exposure, the lights have to be running for 20 minutes, right? And then I reboot to get all the HDMI interfaces activated, so I have to restart the machine, I have to interrupt the stream, right? And then I have to set the camera either, because it was probably just for a 2-person show because we just recorded the faux show. So then I reset the camera to a 1-person show, reset the focus, reset the exposure, reset the brightness of the lights, lock in the Hughes lights, set the focus,
lock in the Hughes,
then get the thing, and then so that's 25-30 minutes of work.
Yeah. Well, I can shave 10 minutes off of that, and that is stop screwing with the Hughes lights. They look just fine. Doesn't matter if your skin has.
Listen,
my skin does not have that. My skin does not have that beautiful blue glow. They don't take any time.
It's about the green screen. It's about the green screen. It is about
the green screen has a blue background, so my skin should have a blue tint to it.
Go ahead. I'm recording this.
Yeah,
No, I'm
me
recording
too,
this for the
locally,
future.
in high
because
def, baby.
Your SOB face over there is going to go buy Hue lights eventually, and I'm going to play this back as a clip. So your face.
We'll see. That's the Internet of Things.
So,
although I did look at a Nest the other day.
I ended up reloading. I get the last profile started, and then I realized, well, I don't have to turn on the lights or even the camera. I'm done. And so then I was like, well, I'll go get a visualizer so I can display so I have a visualizer for the live stream. I'll go load up some old time radio, and then I'll go assemble a frickin' lamp. I actually assembled a lamp because I had extra time. Like I put it together. I put together a lamp, Noah, because I didn't have to set up the video stream, and now I have a nice effing lamp in here. Like it is it's nuts.
So I want to share with you what I'm excited about for doing audio, and unfortunately, it's neither as inexpensive as a lamp nor is it as how shall I say politely, Zen. We'll say Zen.
Okay.
Yeah. But I sent you a link in production chat. But I want to buy one of these because from everyone I've talked to, if I throw down and pick up one of these, you will not be able to tell the difference if I'm on my laptop in an airport or here in the studio.
Let's go have these on this.
Huh?
Let's go have these on this because I could probably. This is maybe what I could use on the road trip.
Yeah. No, we should totally do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because and they only have 5 left in stock, and this is exactly what I've been thinking about too.
No, these are like the creme de la creme. If you go look, and I haven't done it myself, but I was
these are like what the sports broadcasters use and stuff.
Yeah, well, a lot of those guys are telex ones too, but I guess this is the most popular for broadcast. And the guy was telling me, he's like, if you buy, I'm like, the thing is, I bought a broadcasting headset, and I thought it was great until you and I sat down at Linux Fest Northwest, and then you had the RE20, and I put my headset on. I'm like, and we both looked at each other and we're like, no, that's not going to fly. And he goes, you won't. Yeah. He goes, you won't. He goes, you sit right next to an RE20, put this on, and you will be blown away. He's like, blown away. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw down, I'm going to pick some up. So,
well, if you grab those, I'll send you, let me know. I'll PayPal you half of the cash for that.
All right.
Because I'd like to try them too. Maybe I'll use them for the road trip. So I guess you had quite a face when I mentioned that I used Angela's PC for the Windows 10 review, which, by the way, I put her drive back in. She's all back. She's good. She's fine.
Yeah. No. I got concerned that was the end of. Here's the thing. You of all people should understand that face. That face was. We spent how many sleepless nights to get that? We went through how much heartache to decide if we could afford. Well, really, we knew from the beginning that we couldn't afford to do it, but we were just banking on the fact that her old laptop would sell, and that was how much stress. And you wiped it away to put Windows 10 on it. That's what that face encompasses.
What does that tell you? What does that tell you?
That you've gone psychotic and you need to seek professional help.
That I will do anything for the show.
Oh yes. That's actually what I was going to say. It left my mouth differently.
Meanwhile, 7 people got to watch it on YouTube before it got blocked by YouTube.
Cock block.
So, and I filed a dispute that Sunday night, and they have never released the video. And now there are dozens of other videos on YouTube called Windows 10 versus Linux. So it's awesome.